Welcome to Powered Up, the podcast connecting industry leading voices who are energizing the future. Today, we're joined by a powerhouse guest. As Global Marketing and Growth Director, they've helped transform a young energy startup into one of the UK's fastest growing renewable energy solution providers. She's a strategist, a change maker, and a passionate advocate for making sustainability accessible, human, and inspiring. Nnenna, welcome to Powered Up.
Thank you so much for having me, Amelia. I am glad to be here and looking forward to having this insightful conversation.
Thank you, Nana. I'm super excited to dive into your career and what you've been doing to change and influence the sector. So let's start with your rise to renewables. You've got such a fascinating background from fashion and consumer goods to tech and now renewable energy. It's not a typical route into the sector. So what drew you into the energy transition?
My career has always been about connecting people to systems, so towards a desired behavior, whether it's purchase, policies, brand love, all the while building brand equity. So, like you said, whether it's in consumer goods, lifestyle brands, fashion, now clean energy, the sectors may have changed, but the mission hasn't. And most recently, my mission has been to get audiences to make choices that is beneficial for people and planet, making sustainability feel human, emotional, and desirable. So, put it this way, I didn't pivot away from creativity. I tried to bring creativity into an energy that I believe will have the greatest impact in the fight against climate change. My move was, it was the desire to. I remember when at just before the lockdown in 2020, when I decided to do my first study around sustainability and marketing. And then I was still working at Pernod Ricard, and the lockdown, I was here in the UK with my kids. My husband was stuck in another continent, and I had to make the choice between my work, my studies, and coping with my kids. And I chose to let go of working in the luxury and consumer goods sector to focus on sustainability because data started to show us that consumers were moving away from brands that make them look good towards brands that made them feel good. And, I've always had over 18 years in my career now, and most of it I spend that time using my power of marketing and brand building to drive consumers to make choices. And I was like, why don't I pivot that power into making consumers make choices that are more impactful and beneficial to people and planet?
Yeah.
So, at that turn in time, making that decision. At first, I didn't think the renewable energy would be the energy I would go into when I decided to study sustainability. I remember when I had to make the choice between energy transition and fashion. And I was in a room filled with, fashion industry leaders, decision makers. And all I was hearing in the conversations that we're having was that fashion wasn't really ready to make that change into becoming more sustainable. And I wasn't going to spend all this time studying at Cambridge to go into an industry that would break my heart ultimately. And I decided to go into one which is energy transition that I feel I would have the most impact. Seemed exciting and challenging in terms of how do you take technical things and build them into creativity and storytelling to turn the dial into consumer behavior change. So, the move by desire to apply creativity into systems level change in an industry that could actually make a difference in the fight against climate change. Because realizing sustainability conversations in the consumer goods sector, B2Cs, fashion, and tech often stopped at consumption and not infrastructure. And what we desire most is infrastructure change. When you
Yeah.
look at energy, energy is the foundation of everything. So influencing its transformation means influencing everything downstream. So consumer goods, fashion, food, mobility, and everything. So in a way, I am influencing all other industries by being there. So I think that kind of helped me make that decision.
It certainly sounds like it was a tough choice for you. And I know that you've said previously on talks that you've done, that your mission is to turn technology into lifestyle and to make sustainability something people feel connected to,
Yeah.
which I guess is a massive challenge, because renewable energy can be quite technical or distant from everyday life.
Yeah.
So how do you transition that way of thinking into the sector like renewables?
People connect emotionally, with things that impact their day-to-day lives, their everyday life, and so on. So not technicalities or not stuff like megawatts or renewable assets and things like that. So marketing the energy transition shouldn't be about technicalities. It should be about aspiration, identity, belonging in a cleaner and better world. And to the audience, for them, this is about how does this improve my daily life or solve the challenges I'm currently facing today? How does this make this a better world for me and my family? It might as well be to them the food they eat every day versus the gas bills they pay and so
Yeah,
on. So all of that is interconnected. So how does this improve my life? And that's what it all means to them. So
yeah,
using creativity and storytelling and cultural cues that people are used to can make clean energy relatable, desirable, and not dutiful, something that they feel pained to be part of. So my job, I look at my job in the renewable energy sector, not just to market it, but to market possibilities of what a better future could look like, to make sustainable behaviors feel as intuitive as switching on the lights and turning it off every night when you go to bed.
yeah,
So, that for me is, and that's why my marketing can transcend or translate into any industry because it's all about what is the desired behavior you want your audiences to take and what is the desired impact that you want to have on the world. And with that kind of mindset, it makes you look at whether it's renewable energy or fashion sector, I am able to feel comfortable or rather do my job confidently in either of those areas.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you've proved that very well, from where you played a key role in scaling a energy business from ambitious ideas to being a leader player in the sector. So what does successful growth look like in renewables from the journey that you've been on with a startup?
For me, true growth equals scalable impact and culture adoption. And, as a brand builder, one of the things that I've been able to do in order to create the right foundations for any brand or business I've worked in is to build trust first before building pipelines and balancing that structure with storytelling. Innovation needs process, but engagement and storytelling gives it the propulsion it needs to go further. So growth in renewables isn't just about building capacity, it's about building credibility, and I think that is the difference any startup in the sector can do. But one of the challenges from my experience, because I've worked from light source BP and then now NatPower, the challenge is always about building too fast and not sacrificing the right culture within the business because it's people that build technology, not technology building itself.
Hmm.
So, that inflection between startups and institutional scale, learning to translate technical data into human motivation. I see the biggest challenge being speed versus depth,
Yeah.
scaling without losing purpose. And I know, for businesses I've worked in, Lightsource obviously is now part of Lightsource BP, and then NatPower, going fully into the energy transition, whether it's renewables and now the maritime sector.
Hmm.
That speed versus depth, which is what NatPower is trying to do at the moment, is go into depth. We've built ourselves at least everyone I know I did have a part to play in that is having that power become a household name and known within the energy transition within a short period of time. We're now trying to dig deep in terms of delivering on what we have tried to educate and tell people about, telling stories of what the future of energy transition can be, not just for the UK, Europe, the west of the world as a whole, across all sectors. But I have to say that every scaling business does hit a point where the question becomes, are we growing fast or are we growing well? And I can assure you that that is the question we're currently asking ourselves at the moment.
Well, there's been some pretty big news around NatPower recently, hasn't there, in regards to the battery energy storage pipeline in the UK. So you're obviously growing in the right direction for sure.
Well, we're glad to see it that way and having the necessary conversations and not just building a pipeline, but actually being a part of what the future challenges would look like. So when you consider the scale at which artificial intelligence is growing and then the growing demand for data centers and so on, we are also looking into what role we would play in that scale and who are the right partners we can work with in making sure that that scale is sustainable and not one that continues to draw on the natural resources that we have.
Fantastic. And you mentioned there that you've built brands that stand up for their purpose and their clarity, not just as energy developers, but as change makers. So, how do you approach building a brand that's both credible and inspiring?
For me, it's about clarity of purpose. And, I say that maybe it's because of that STEM background in me. So my first degree is in food and industrial microbiology, my second degree in pharmacy, and then my third degree is in marketing. So marketing is actually my third degree, but I'm a scientist at
Wow.
heart. So for me, I've always appreciated the application of data, doing the research, digging deep into understanding your audience and the impact to what you have. And that gives you clarity of purpose. And when you do that, you know what direction that you need to go. And the next step is the proof of the progress. So, having proof in terms of the work that you're doing, having that you actually deliver results in the direction that you decided to go into, and if it's not delivering the results you want, you change course.
Hmm.
So clarity of purpose, proof of progress, and then emotional or cultural relevance to whatever audience that you are targeting at that time.
Yeah.
So, in recent years, the move from green messaging to earn trust is always that actual trick in terms of how do we make the real impact. Because most people don't believe climate change, or rather, some people do not. And then some people see that green messaging as perhaps greenwashing or a hoax or something that brands just make up in order for them to look good. So, how do you move from green messaging to earning trust? And for the industry I'm in now, not just standing on the premise of clean energy, but actually building lasting impact as an outcome of that. So, and that is by, you know, being in the communities that we work with to understand how can what we're trying to do actually, you know, how can the culture of that community influence the work we are trying to do in order to build lasting impact. So you have to look at it in that equation. And most of the time it's not a one size fits all. It's differences. So I can give a practical example of, when you're building a project or renewable energy in a brown site, for example, it means it's not green land or land that could be farmable or something. Does that mean we then apply, the purpose we are bringing to another community where we're building areas in Greenland and so on? We
Yeah.
obviously look at, okay, with the brown side, if we can't do that, what do they have? Is it maritime? Is it universities? Do we do grants? So you have to look at what will mean most to them versus, in that community versus another community. So it has to be that equation of combining the two in order to create lasting impact. So purpose must live in the decisions and not behind the desk, or, where you sit down, oh no, this is the process, this is what we go, and then you apply
Yeah.
it everywhere. No, purpose must live in what is relevant for the community, in the decisions we make. So
Yeah.
people don't trust perfect brands. They trust honest ones with a
Hmm.
record of delivery. And that has been a testament to time and time again. That is also always what stands the test of time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. You touched on it just then, that the renewable industry, it holds so many myths in the sector. And you've mentioned about overcoming collaborations or pushbacks with communities. How do you specifically approach them with building a brand like NatPower? There's got to be lots of certain partnerships along the way, or lots of community and understanding or engagement that you have to do as a brand and growth director.
I know one of the major challenges that we faced, especially in the work that I doing with Nat Power, was community engagement and busting myths around things that are not true when it comes to renewable energy
Hmm.
building or the energy transition. Because we what we did is we met with a lot of skepticism in communities, but instead we dug deep with participation instead, where our intention is to build projects with communities and not for them. So frame a benefit that is beyond net zero, creating jobs, education opportunities, giving them a pride of place, a legacy for generations to come. And if you look at the brand campaign that we built when we were trying to engage with landowners within the communities, and when you consider the fact that a lot of landowners in the UK, at least the size of land we're looking for, tend to be farmers, and with the impact of climate change, two of the things these audience are most concerned about is, being able to sustain their livelihood and continuing a legacy for them for generations to come. Like, I want to make sure this farming remains in my family for generations to come. And in order for me to do that, I need to sustain my earnings, my
Yeah.
source of living. And so the thought comes in, what can we do in order to alleviate that challenge that they're facing, to show that what we're trying to do will help them, overcome these challenges that they're facing. And that was how we targeted the campaign, looked at it as a fact that you can lease your land, work with us, where not only are we working to uplift biodiversity in all the areas where we're building, but then you will gain that benefit. For that, you would also gain the benefit of having access to clean energy in order to drive your agricultural tools and technology so that you can move into a more regenerative agriculture. And then also, by having this source of income, you can then protect your legacy for future generations to come. So it was about, that storytelling, making it true
Hmm.
to them and making it relatable and solving the challenge that they're facing at the time. So for me, trust grows when people see the energy transition happening with them, not to them. They do not need to fully understand what sustainability means, only how it makes life better for them and helps secure what they most fear to lose.
I love that. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I wanted to also address the question you asked around, the type of partnerships or collaborations we could do to make that a reality. So one of the things we committed to when we engage with communities is that we talk about, how we can collaborate with their local institution, whether it's universities or NGOs or whatever projects that they're doing in order to show co-benefits in action. For example, NAPA working with Evergear, working with institutions like Soil Association that can actually have the knowledge and ability to uplift the biodiversity in communities impacted by climate change, therefore securing the future of farming in areas that none of the sites we bought in or built are building on are actually agricultural sites, the ones that are a grade C or less. But, with our commitment to deliver up to over 90% biodiversity uplift, it will actually make
Wow.
these, communities have more impact against, or rather to give them the opportunity to secure a future in farming.
Hmm. It's fantastic because it means that they're not only seeing the benefit of a very pretty solar farm or wind farm or battery storage unit, but actually the generations to come are seeing the benefit through jobs, through longevity on the agricultural side. So it's not just a here and now, here's a project being delivered. It's longevity for the community. So that's fantastic.
Yeah,
You
exactly. So don't just drop renewable assets in communities, but build infrastructures into them, systems of change that will enable a legacy of becoming some of the most sustainable communities in the country.
Fantastic. Amazing. And you mentioned, obviously currently you're leading an initiative to electrify the maritime sector. So that's incredibly ambitious challenge given how carbon intensive shipping and ports can be. What makes this work so important for the sector?
Shipping emits as much as aviation, and it's the backbone of trade, but is the blind spot for decarbonization. Maritime electrification is both is both an environmental necessity and an innovation frontier. And if the ocean connects the world, then electrifying it should connect the future.
Hmm.
So for us, it makes sense that electrifying the maritime sector is one that can scale the energy transition in terms of the commitments, whether it's 2030 or 2035 or 2050, whatever targets and stuff we've set. Actually doing that will help make it easier for us to get there. And this will redefine energy as a whole, because
Hmm.
energy transition isn't just a power shift, it's a cultural one. And when we electrify ports, we're not just changing engines, we are changing economies, we're improving air qualities, we are creating endless opportunities for the future. And you can look at it in technical terms such as Scope 3 emissions for the cargo owners, and then Scope 1 and 2 emissions for ports and shipping lines.
It's fantastic. Areas that I didn't think were possible to electrify or transition into the renewable side. You're making waves, pardon the pun. But you mentioned just there, quite interestingly, about educating senior leaders in the business, but you've actually spoken at global forums, mentored students, and you've also personally founded platforms that amplify youth voices in sustainability. So education in the sector is so important, not just formally and culturally from your perspective. Um, how how important do you actually think it is in terms of getting through to educating the individual?
I like, it's good that you mentioned that. I was in a room filled with industry leaders a couple of weeks ago from people behind the biggest media houses. And then you have leaders from businesses like DP World. Like, I was in a room filled with a lot of these people. And one of the things we all aligned on, as much as we talk to businesses or institutions or governments and bodies and whatnot, it is people that are behind all these institutions. It's
Mhm.
people. So then that then begs the question, how do you engage these people in a way where they make the right decisions when it comes to policy change? They challenge what could be a decision that will impact generations to come, or they even if they don't understand, they ask the right questions. So for me, one of the strategies was putting the leaders within NatPower business, for example, in front of the cameras to talk about why we're doing what we're doing, what is important, giving details about the work, how we're going to get there. One of the things the government like to know as well is how will this bring more into our economy. So establishing that was able for them. You now see the government bringing us into the table to discuss how we can actually deliver on these commitments that will benefit everyone in the country or
Mhm.
as a whole in the globe. And when you look at how much just that educating is able to start opening doors and people asking questions, you then want to dig deep to say we should make this a foundation of engaging even the leaders of the future of tomorrow, the people that will decide, you know what, this is what I want to study because I believe it's to do this. So opening the renewable energy sector, how has always been a kind of close-knit sector where
Mhm.
you don't really need to explain to the rest of the world what they're doing. They just need to focus on what they're doing in order to scale or build what they know is valuable. But then when you start to get people to understand what this means for my daily life, you then understand that knowledge creates agency. You can't join a revolution you don't understand. Education must go beyond classrooms into culture, media, and by design. So empowering young voices, they will demand the changes we desire and will drive innovation. So for me, education or knowledge is the most renewable energy resource we actually have.
That's an incredible
So
way to put it. That's fantastic.
exactly, exactly. Blending purpose with practice, where the science is learned and they master the storytelling, you then start to feel imaginations, because it's actually creativity and imagination that will define technology of the future, not
Hmm.
technology itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And from everybody that I speak to in the sector who may have just accidentally ended up here and not necessarily chased a career into renewable energies, one thing aligns: there's so much passion in the industry that has come from learning and educating themselves on what the future looks like. So I can agree with you more in terms of educating the future being a key part. Is there anything that the next generation you feel need to understand the most when looking at renewable energy?
I feel the next generation should get more involved in it. Nothing more inspiring for me when I see young people being more curious as to what they can do with energy. Like how far can we take this? The next generation shouldn't wait for permission to innovate. The industry needs creative disruptors. Because for me, the energy transition won't be led by technology alone, like I mentioned before. It has to be
Hmm.
powered by creativity, collaboration, culture, and they need to keep asking the questions. Okay, but why? But why?
Yeah,
But why not? But why not? And when that happens, the next generation in energy transition, power won't come from the grid. It will come from their imagination. And, so every revolution needs engineers and dreamers. And our work now is to make sure that we create room for everyone to be there, both the engineers and the dreamers, in order for us to power the future, in order for them to feel like they're a part of it. And whether it's a guy or a girl, everyone feel that they have a role to play in it. I led a keynote a few days ago where I was talking to a room full of people about what the future of technology could be like. And when you're talking to a room filled with people where not everyone are the technical experts or
yeah,
the engineer, I had to push their thoughts or their mind in a way that whether it's in the policy of it, whether it's in the storytelling of it, or whether it's in educating the futures of tomorrow, the children, everyone, you can actually play a role on what that looks like. And that is the mindset that the next generation should have, I
that's
feel.
fantastic. I completely agree with you. And that's such an inspiring note to take, I think, from the podcast, which leads us on to our last question, which is, if you could leave our listeners with one thought to help power up the future, what would it be?
Well, I have lots of thoughts, but considering I'm on a renewable energy podcast, I must say, as a person who is both a creative and a scientist, the one thing I will say, or that I have to leave with our audience, is that the energy transition won't be led by technology alone. It will be powered by creativity, collaboration, and culture. So, what is your wildest imagination in order to push the envelope? So that we can move away things that we are used to or what things are in order to get what the things that could be.
Fantastic and truly inspiring. This has honestly been an incredible conversation, and you've left me feeling warm and fuzzy with inspiration. And even from scaling the startup through to rapid growth, your mission of humanizing sustainability has just been absolutely fantastic. If listeners want to follow your work, where should they go?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is the best place that will connect them to every other place that they can engage with me, social media, website, everywhere. I try as much as I can to engage with people that reach out to me on that platform. But yeah,
Fantastic. Brilliant. Wow, Nana, thank you so much for joining us on Powered Up. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to everyone listening, join us again soon on the next episode.
pleasure is all mine, Amelia. Take care.